fire inspections. He's a property owner, has a couple of apartments, and the city issued violations for, for not having the proper fire inspection conducted. The client at one point asserted a Fourth Amendment, a search and seizure claim, noting that, you don't have the right to just come in and inspect. We looked at the code, and there were some issues that had the fire department, sought an administrative warrant and claimed that there was some sort of danger, they could just come in and inspect willy-nilly. But there was no such warrant that was requested. Not even that it was denied. It was never requested. And so we believe our client had the absolute right to say, no, thank you. Don't come in. Don't disrupt my tenants. And he was fined over $500 per unit. And so it was 4 citations. It raised over $2,000 in fines. And again, the reason we took this, several reasons, but one of the reasons we thought this was worth fighting for in court was you're talking a small property owner and the city just jamming an administrative action down his throat and saying, comply with what we want or else. And in this case, the or else was, almost $2,500 in fines. And that was just a start.
Right. So this is I think starting to become a very common occurrence here in Washington, and it's at the local, very local level. This being in Spokane, and I think we're going to start seeing it at the state level. And I want to bring people's attention to the fact that the deficit that the state is running, the only way they don't make money, the state doesn't produce anything to make money. The only way that they can make up a deficit is to extract it from the people. And if a city government is running the same deficit, they're doing the same thing. So we are going to see these infringement on our rights, and that's why, on top of what you just said, that's why as an organization we see these as fights that are worth making and putting a foot down and setting some precedent and pushing back on those governments from trying to extract our property from us.
Well, absolutely. And one thing I don't think I told the end of the story was we actually defeated, the city's claims. And so our client walked out. All of the citations were dismissed with what's called prejudice. In other words, city, you cannot try to refile these cases. If you want to, catch an issue, start from, step one, not just coming back to court and saying, yeah, but, and that's kind of what the history of this was, it'd been moved a couple times for our purpose. It had also been, the city had just filed and I hadn't received it, an amended complaint. And when I said, look, Your Honor, there's no notice of what this individual's violating. And when you look at the citations, it's very generic. He said, yeah, I'm going to dismiss this with prejudice because there's no notice. So, I think that was a huge win for what we call due process rights. But to your point, the biggest concern is, and I think, look, we've seen the regulatory encroachment, the infringement of our rights, the infringement of our monetary system. It's just continually grown. And, my kids watch Tuttle Twins, and they've got the inflation monster or something like that. And it's like this octopus that just grows its tentacles, right? And that's what the regulatory overreach system is here in Washington. Oh, we've got a deficit that, by the way, we, the legislature, have created. So what are we going to do? We're going to tax people. We're going to spend their money. And we're going to create another $9 billion in new revenue streams. Well, you're not going to get $9 billion without a lot of red tape that's unnecessary.
Right.
That's why things take too long. That's why they cost too much. And it doesn't give us a benefit of some real safety. They cloak it in that. And that's what this case was. Oh, safety, safety, safety. No, everything's fine. It was inspected before. Life's good. Things haven't changed. Don't fine me $2,000, $2,500, right? So it was great to have that win because I think it just stands for, to your point, people have asked us, like, where is our property rights case? And we have some history in that. But I think this is one that puts another exclamation point in it. Not only a victory for SMF, not only a victory for our client, but a victory for the people of Washington to know that they have an extra watchdog that's saying, stop government overreach.
Right. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about those other cases. We kind of have our roots, and when we tell our story, we go back to being in the garage, talking to business owners, and them losing their livelihoods, and our friends and family having to leave, where they're at to start over again. There was a couple of businesses we were able to represent early on. Can you remind us of those businesses and where they're at today, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, in the pre-SMF world, you and I in your garage talking about it. I had a night on city council when I tried to bring the no mask mandate ordinance that just flopped, not because I didn't do it well, but because we had a liberal city council majority at the time here in Pasco. And ultimately, I had a Shakey's Pizza reached out and said, "Hey, I'm my liquor license is under attack by Liquor Cannabis Board." And of course, I knew the guy to be a bit of a wild card, and I said, "Okay, so what's going on? Like, who did you overserve? Or like, what are we doing here?"
Right.
And initially, it was a brush off. Like, I expected him to have done something stupid. He said, "No, man. It's all about I'm not forcing masks on my patrons." And this was back in the COVID area where you had to have your stupid, your bathtub shade type outdoor pavilions that somehow magically cured COVID, or you had to have a mask on and take a bite. And even though you were respirating while you're eating, somehow COVID wasn't going to spread between chews. And so ultimately we helped him. We drafted a notice of dismissal of that. Unfortunately, we got to the point where he drafted everything and he didn't file it. Now, the good news is that eventually went away through the efforts of new ownership, and Shakey's, as far as I can tell, I mean, they might not be, they're operating. Right. I mean, I know, because I've been there in the past 5 years. I've been to kids, award ceremonies for softball and such. So, right. So yeah, I mean, it's good to see that they're there. The other case that I think was a really solid victory that we really haven't talked about in a long, long time was the Spanaway Fitness case.
Right.
And that was a case where a gym stayed open and actually modified its business, its business MO to providing not just a gym, but there were like meal services, meal planning, different wellness things. Because
it was a wellness clinic.
Yeah.
A lot of them had to
and that's what
rebrand
they did.
as.
Yes, and that's the ridiculous nature is they had to rebrand, the same product that they were providing as wellness, and they could stay open in COVID. And the state of Washington didn't like it in this case, and there was $108,000 penalty that through litigation we whittled back to I think like $15,000 or less.
Right.
And when we were ready to go to the hearing, and it was like 3 days before Christmas and snowing, and my kids had some event, and I talked to our client. I said, "Look, here's your risk reward. We're down to 15 grand or 10 grand, whatever the number was. We can go to hearing tomorrow and risk that, because 108 is what you're up against and potential attorney's fees. So you let me know what you want to do." And that night he called back and said, "Let's settle it." And so to me, some people say, "Well, why did you settle it?" That's not my business decision.
Right.
It's not my money. It's the client's money. And we did get a victory out of that. We whittled it down. Like, I don't know if you've ever bought anything at 90% off and felt bad about it, but but our client didn't.
It's a heck of a deal. But it does highlight the fact that there really is a no-win situation when we're dealing with governments that are willing to extract this kind of money out of the people. They're willing to issue those fines. And because it's no loss to them, to your point, they'll take a 90% hit because they're still getting that 15 grand. They're still getting that 10 grand, whatever it ended up being. They're still getting that money. They're still extracting that money out of us and taking our property from us in the name of safety or whatever they want to cloak it in. For the well-being of the rest of everybody else. But it sure doesn't feel that way when you're the one getting fined for something that you didn't do wrong.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of things to extract from your statement there. There's the first one, which is, yeah, you didn't do anything wrong. And then there's the other one of, I understand folks saying this. Why was I the target, right? How did I stick my neck out, or did I stick my neck out? I mean, this guy did everything right in the COVID era. And I mean, the Shakey's thing, I mean, just the fact that the guy didn't force masks on. It's ridiculous that the United States government, in this case, the state of Washington, like that would even be a real thing here. And I mean, that was a huge awakening to how bad it had gotten. I knew it because we were fighting it, and we were, told not to go to church and all sorts of stuff. But man, that was a crazy time. And I'm concerned that we're heading back that way. And if we're not heading back to that, to your point, the government's going to extract everything it can from us, because even if it gives us a 99% discount, it's still getting something.
Right.
It's still pulling something. It's got its operational budget, and then we got these fringe benefits, is what I call them, when they pull money out of guys like you and I, or out of Shakey's, or out of Spanaway, because of what? Fear?
Right.
I mean, those people were already salaried employees and covered based on a budget. Now you get an extra 15 grand, an extra 10 grand. You're going to be able to hire more people to do more work and to extract more money. It really is a racket.
Yeah, totally. It totally is. So at the heart of these businesses, though, what they're really, they're extracting the money, but what they're threatening it with the reason that they can extract that money from these businesses is because ultimately, to do business in Washington, you need a license. And we saw that time and time again throughout COVID. And even now, they are threatening your license if you don't comply with whatever fee, fine, faux fum that they want to put on you. So is there a way we can push back? And we're seeing that even in the legislature. They're requiring licenses for everything and anything now.
Yeah, as far as how to push back, you have really kind of three options. One is you actually get involved in the legislative process and hope your voice sticks. I have very little confidence in that, because I've watched our legislature operate. There's a lot of hot air and a lot of space between the ears that's vacant and void. And, a lot of lemming approach, hey, we'll pass this bill because that's what our party's told us to do. And so I have very little hope in that, but I think you still have to. You have to try, because that's the first opportunity to make your voice heard. The second opportunity is obviously with what we do here at Silent Majority Foundation, and push through and bring those lawsuits. And, that has its own risks. It's cost prohibitive. You get into a lawsuit, you could lose attorney's fees, not just what you're paying or donating to SMF, but, you may have to pay the state or whoever's attorney's fees that you're suing. And obviously, the more bad precedent that gets set through bad decisions in courts, it makes it harder for folks like us to fight. That said, that's where I'm most comfortable fighting. Mm-hmm. And then the third option is just kind of throw it to the wind and, put your middle fingers up and go out riding without a license. Certainly not an approach that I would take. But, you hear folks of trying to go to like a creditless society type thing, having a cash-based everything where you're just trading on reputation and without oversight. And, that is an alternative world in which we could live.
Right. And I think that we're starting to see that alternative economy starting to grow and starting to take shape. And I think with some of the laws that are coming down the pipeline, especially when it comes to firearms, I think we're seeing a black market or an alternative market start to emerge. But we all know where that goes, especially with firearms.
Yeah, it's a concerning thought, at least from my perspective. Part of why I do this is to hedge off anyone from getting there, right? Look, we'll never cease a black market. Criminals will always get guns through the black market. But, what they're doing is criminalizing constitutionally protected behavior, whether it's the Gators guns, large capacity magazines, the Guardian Arms assault weapons ban, or 1163, which is the House bill that passed this year requiring a permit to purchase as well as certain training. When did you need a license to utilize a constitutionally protected right? And the answer was really never. Hell, if that's how they wanted to do about everything, and the right to vote isn't protected in the Constitution, but there is a right to vote that's been, protected. I guess, actually, let me restate that. There is a right to vote in the Constitution. as long as you're of age and all that sort of thing. So I'll strike that and walk that back. That's my bad. But your right to vote's not protected the same way. I mean, that's why you hear cries of cheating,
Right.
because people who don't have that right, that can't exercise that right. I mean, now granted, obviously the state of Washington's walked back felons, but like theoretically, if you were a felon, you used to not be able to vote. And if you were voting, you were doing it illegally. If you're not a citizen of the United States and of Washington, resident of Washington, you cannot vote legally here. But there is no repercussion. And all we hear from the legislature and the folks in Olympia is, it's safe, trust us. Well, bullshit, man.
Right.
And I don't know where we're streaming this, but oh well. No FCC fines. No, dude, that's not the case. You can't pick and choose where you're going to license people. You can't say the Second Amendment doesn't deserve it.
Right.
You got to have a license to utilize it. But the right to vote, you have to just have lived here and get some sort of Department of Licensing license, just show up. And when I say license, I mean identification.
Right.
It's
there's a war of words going on, and one of the phrases that the left likes to use, I'll just say the left for this in this instance, likes to talk about democracy being in jeopardy, or now they're starting to say there's a constitutional crisis, and they're pointing fingers, obviously the other direction. The Constitution's under attack in the other direction. This is very clearly the issue, is that there is a constitutional crisis, but it's not coming from the right. It's not coming from a conservative. It's not coming from the federal government, of all places. You'd think that would be where we'd have to be guarding it from. But at this moment, we're seeing it at the state level. The state is completely treading on not only the national Constitution of the United States, but also on the state constitution. And they are rightfully saying there is a constitutional crisis, but they're not pointing the finger in the right direction. And that's what's extremely frustrating here. And I think that people are getting upset with being lied to and being gaslit. Once again, another one of those buzzwords that people love to use right now. But absolutely just being deceitful in the reality that the Constitution right now is under attack, but it's from the state legislature. It's from the left side. They're trying to take our constitutional rights that are in both the United States Constitution and the state Constitution, and then they're trying to say, well, it's because of the other people over there.
Yeah, I mean, it's somehow the smoke and mirrors, and they forget to look in the mirror. And to your point, they're absolutely orchestrating a constitutional crisis. They have been for a long time. Absolutely violating rights. Specifically the Second Amendment has been so far under attack and under siege. And that's why we fight those cases. But equally importantly, the right to speak, the right to hear. I mean, that's why we took those doctor's license cases. You should be able to hear medical advice from your doctor, full stop.
Period.
Yeah. I mean, and when you're not allowed to because it's, quote, misinformation, who the hell defined that? And we all know that. It's the government. So, until they have competent scientists who actually look at everything instead of just regurgitate what they're told, I mean, get out of my doctor's office.
Right.
So yeah, that's why we fight these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I always find it funny when we talk about experts, because I took a philosophy logic class when I was in school, and one of the fallacies, the argument of fallacies, is the appeal to authority, and it blows my mind how often people want to use that appeal to authority as their reason for doing something that is obviously wrong. When we have the ultimate authority being the Constitution, being the things that we can look to that have stood the test of time, but now they want to say that there's a new authority that supersedes the authority of the Constitution. And that's really where we need to start and get back to. And that's why we have the followers, and we continue to encourage people to follow what we do, support what we do, and fight the fight that we're fighting, because it's not just about your property rights. It's not just about your Second Amendment right. your right to speech, your right to religion. All of those things are under attack currently. Every single one of those things. But guess what? There's one place that all those things reside in and are protected, and that's in the Constitution. And when we can get behind that as a people and start pulling in the same direction, that's where our power lies.
Yeah, I mean, the only way to win is to fight back, and I don't mean violence. I don't mean, and if that's your cup of tea, on you. Like, that's just not where we are. We see what's happened of the churches up in Seattle, and the way that they're getting activated. That's one way to do it. It'll be interesting to see if sometime they require a license, but don't forget there was a permit required to have the Cal Anderson Park element. Right. You had to go through a process.
Right.
So, I mean, even that alone, you can't just magically show up as a body of people, or else you will get expelled from that area. So, yeah, I mean, we have to accept that there is a constitutional crisis, but it's being cultivated and created and perpetuated by those people that are claiming it, specifically on the left. They don't understand the Constitution. Either that or they understand it fully and they're just nakedly lying. Either way, it's problematic because our rights are inherent. They are protected. They're inherent between God and man. They are protected by the Constitution, and it stands as a buffer zone between us and the government. And the more and more and more we let government go unchecked, the less and less and less we're going to have. The $9 billion will turn into a $15 billion deficit, will turn into a $30 billion deficit. And at some point, you will have, own nothing, and
you'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah. So I'm not going to be happy.
Well, that's definitely the direction we're headed. But to your point about not being violent, I think that we're currently not there, but I know there's a lot of people that have their line in the sand and they're starting to say, this is it. This is it. And we know throughout history, violence has only been the answer that they had.
Yeah.
But the revolution was a violent revolution, the United States Revolution. And, maybe we're going to get to that point. But right now we still have some options. We still can get together and unite and fight this without having to shed blood, without having to fight brother to brother, family among family, friend among friend, like they did during the Civil War. We don't have to get to that point. But what it's going to take is people to stand up in their communities and say enough is enough. The Constitution endows us individually as the people the power. It protects us specifically against the government. The government doesn't get to decide what's constitutional. It's we the people and what is in the Constitution as ratified at the time of its ratification.
Absolutely, and those are the rights that we will continually protect. And not because we're lazy and just want to fall back to history, but because those were the rights that were inherent to creating a new nation. Those were the rights that were absolute and necessary enough to make the United States of America not just some crazy idea, but something worth fighting for, something worth uniting to actually perpetuate. And I don't want to see the downfall of Rome in my lifetime. And, if we're not careful, we will see that downfall.
We're awfully close. And both you and I have kids, and we don't want to see it for them or their kids as well.
No, absolutely not.
So, I don't know. That's what we had written down to talk about. Anything else you wanted to reach out and touch the people with?
No, I mean, look, every win, when I'm sure folks will be like, well, that's a small win. And it's like, but it's a win.
Yeah.
A win against a city that's turning blue if it's not already blue. And I don't necessarily believe Spokane to be a true blue city, a cheated blue, whatever we want to call it. I mean, you look at where they are. They're struggling. They're struggling to perpetuate the values of the Constitution, and to have a victory in that court and have a judge say, yeah, this really required some sort of different notice. There were different requirements. The city can't just run roughshod and say, hey, we're going to bilk you for $2,500. That's a good feel. Mm-hmm. And I think our donors and supporters and everyone watching should say, hey, let's rejoice in this, and let's live to fight another day, and let's go fight and win. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to take our Gators case to the Supreme Court, not just for our client, but for the people of Washington. And here's the craziest part. Now we are literally litigating that issue for the people of the United States of America.
Right.
And how wonderful is that? Especially if we have a favorable ruling, which we anticipate out of the U.S. Supreme Court. We will have done something to protect everybody's firearm rights.
Exactly.
That's what we're here for, to protect everybody's rights. Now, not every case can stick the landing. Not every case can be taken. Not every appeal can be taken. But we're going to do everything we can with all the resources we have. But without you, without your support, we cannot fight another day. We have to have the support of the people, whether it's the people of Washington or any other state. We've got to have your support. We are grateful for your prayers. We are grateful for your efforts. We are grateful for the thoughts you send us. But we are at a point where we really, really need the finances to make sure that we're solvent and that we're able to bring these cases to fruition. The last thing we want to do is fumble on the 1 yard line because we can't put gas in the tank. And that's what we got to have. So we really need your support today. Go out, become a monthly donor, or if you've got resources, send them. If you've got a large chunk that you donate to 501c3s, that's us. Send the money our way, and we will keep fighting for your rights.
Hey, Pete, we want to celebrate the win. We're so, just stoked that we've got some momentum going into this. We've got some momentum going into SCOTUS. If we can get there, we can really make a difference, and we're excited about that. And every single one of you that has donated, that has supported us, you're part of that winning story. You're part of that reason why we can keep on doing that. But go forth and do good, and we'll talk to you next time.